Hi guys, it's Millie with Millie's Vines. I am back with another video today. I am doing my best right now to post every single week. It is a little bit of a challenge, but I hope you guys are enjoying it. Today I am a little bit apprehensive to share this video, honestly, but I think it's important. I am going to talk about some of my learning experiences while I have owned plants. I began getting into plants 2020, March 2020. I know a lot of you guys can relate, but since then I've had a lot of great moments. I've had a lot of highlights, and I've also had some learning experiences, and I've also made some pretty significant mistakes. So I think it's important, especially when it comes to social media, to be transparent about your successes and then some things that maybe don't go so well. So that's what I'm going to be sharing today. I do ask that everyone is kind and supportive in the comments. I do have some examples of some current plants that maybe aren't doing so well. And before I show those, I do want to remind you guys I have a collection of like a little less than 100 plants, probably like around 70 or 80. I don't know. I don't count anymore, but there's only about like 4 or 5 that aren't doing well. But again, a little bit nervous to share this. So be supportive, guys. This is a safe place, so any mistakes you've made, anything you can relate to, would love to hear more about it. Thank you guys, and let's get into it. Really quick, before I get into the examples that I have to share today, I think my biggest tip, and you guys have probably already heard this, is do not go out and buy a whole bunch of plants all at once. I really recommend starting slow. I did not, and I ended up being very overwhelmed. Next thing I knew, I had plants that were like passing out left and right because they were super dehydrated. I didn't have like a good intuition on like what needed watering. I didn't have that like natural flow of things yet, so I was very overwhelmed. That is probably the biggest tip. Just don't do too much. The plants are going to be there. You can get them at any point, so just slowly add in maybe like a plant a week. I don't know. That seems kind of like a lot too, but just don't do too much. I know it's exciting. I did the same thing, but that's probably my biggest tip. My next one is trying to isolate new plants. You never know what's going to be in the soil, on the leaves, when you get them from new nurseries. And if those spread and you have a large collection, that's very overwhelming as a new plant person. So that would be tip number 2. My third tip is ideally don't repot them the second you get them back. I know you guys have already heard these tips, but I just like to emphasize this. They go through a lot of shock when they have less humidity, different conditions. So just kind of give your plant a second to chill. I'm trying to think of any other ones I can think of right off the top. Repotting, that's something I struggle with. I'm not the best when it comes to repotting. I think oftentimes I kind of pack in the soil a little bit too much and there's no aeration left. So that's something that I'm still playing with now, having a better medium that has a lot of aeration, chunky bark, perlite, stuff like that. But I think those are the biggest things I wanted to highlight before I get into some examples. Okay, so we are going to get into the most devastating plant mistake that I currently have. This is my baby. This is my newest leaf on my Monstera. I got this plant back in 2020, so it is a couple, 3 years old now. These 2 leaves are good, but let's go into what happened here. So I had this plant originally where this silver sword is right by the window. This is a southwest exposure. It gets so much light. It has been literally 115, 120 degrees recently, and it's been really hot. And accidentally, this plant got scorched. So you can see this leaf. When I noticed that this was burnt this bad, I literally cried. So I want you guys to know, like, this is something that's still painful for me, and it's really sad. These are leaves that I grew while I had this plant, so it's just, I took this loss personally. But this one, long story short, I went to repot this because I was kind of freaking out a little bit. I noticed that this leaf was starting to die off. It had scorching all over the ends, which I cut off of each and every single leaf here. On the way back, after having it repotted by the place that I got it from, this leaf was resting against the car window, and I honestly didn't realize it. So by the time I got it home, this was crisped away, and I sobbed in the bathroom when I saw this. So really sad. Obviously, I'm going to lose this leaf eventually, and that leaf. But to remedy this, I have pulled it away from the window. I'm hoping that once I get rid of these 3 leaves, unfortunately, it will bounce back. It'll give me some new growth. I have some growth here, which is helpful, but this is by far my devastating or most devastating mistake that I've made. So we're going to bounce from it. We're going to be fine. You can see that the new growth is doing exceptionally well. So I'm confident and comfortable that it will get better, but this is honestly a major L and I'm super sad. So 3 leaves down here. Biggest tip obviously is do not scorch your plants. Do not have them resting against a hot window. Do not have them too close to a window. Please learn from my mistakes here. I'm sad to show this, but again, it's important to be transparent. And yeah, this is where my monstera is currently at, but I'll keep you guys updated. It's gonna get better. I already have a little new leaf right here, kind of. It's probably gonna take quite a while, but we're gonna get better. So that is the first one. The second thing we're going to talk about today, I have a tendency to be an underwaterer, which I think ultimately is probably better than overwatering, but the results of underwatering that you can see here, this plant right here, I planted like a new shoot into this, but if you can see, actually it's a better angle from here, this whole leaf or whole stem, minus these guys, you can see that it's bare all the way up. And it's bare because I underwatered it, so I lost all the bottom leaves. That's typically how you can tell. This is the closest leaf to the base, which is about like I don't even know, almost like 2 feet away from it. Really sad, but it's something that I'm working on, is just making sure I'm not underwatering these guys. It's the same situation here. You can see this really well. I had a whole bunch of leaves towards the bottom. It actually looks like I might have some root there if that would focus. But I lost a whole bunch of leaves. There should be leaf, but I don't have them because I underwatered. So what I would say here is I still like to err on the side of underwatering, but don't go as crazy as I went with it, because you will lose the bottom leaves and then they'll start to look more like a tree than a bushy plant all the way through. So again, learn from my mistakes. Next, we are going to talk about my bonsais. These are my babies, and you can see this juniper has declined significantly. I don't think it's dead, but I do know that there's no green leaves pretty much at all left on this. It's super sad. Honestly, I think I pruned this one too much and I think I shocked it. I think that's issue number 1. I also know that this is outdoors and it's currently averaging around 115, again to like 120 degrees. I'm not even kidding you guys. So it's super hot. I don't think I watered it enough. So I think I pruned it too much. Temperatures are really high and I think it was slightly underwatered. I could be wrong. I am honestly not sure what I'm going to do with this plant, but super sad. I shed some tears about this one as well. I think my ficus is doing pretty good. It still looks like it's, I don't know. It still is probably hot. I honestly might bring these indoors because I just think it's way too intense. The sunlight is just vicious. So these are to be determined. If anyone is good and experienced with bonsais, please give me some tips, because these are my babies and I want them to be happy. I want all my plants to be happy. So I'm keeping a close eye on these, but any tips, please leave them below. I would really appreciate it. So it is pretty obvious what the mistake is here, and I'm so sad about this one too. I saw this the other day. I was super surprised. This is my euphorbia on the right, and you can tell it is scorched. So that is really depressing. I'm honestly not well about showing any of these to you guys. Really sad about it. I don't know what my plan is here. I mean, I don't think the plant is dead. I think it's okay. It's just one of those things that cosmetically it's definitely damaged. So I've tried to move it against the corner so it's more shaded. I probably am honestly just going to rearrange my whole entire patio just because the sun is so intense. So I'll do that at a later point, but very sad. I've had this plant for probably about 3 years and it's so beautiful, and I just feel like when I saw it burnt, I could almost like hear it crying. So I just feel like a very sad plant parent, but just be mindful, check your plants that are outside, especially if you're in like a desert-like place like I am. Don't neglect them. That's something that I have unfortunately learned throughout this experience this summer. Now, this is a new issue that I haven't run into too much. I actually think I overwatered this plant. So I don't know where that came from for me. This is my variegated aloe, and I shed some tears about this one as well. I love this plant. It doesn't look as pretty as it normally looks, but I think the top, honestly, it got scorched a little bit. So we got issue number 1, and then you can see the way it's just wobbling. I think it's just had a serious case of root rot. It does not look good. Another thing I noticed with this is it's extremely squishy. That's typically how you can tell if something has been overwatered, is if there's just like almost like a jelly type substance, you can see when I squeeze it, it just, ugh, it feels honestly kind of disgusting. So I do not think this one is savable. I potentially could propagate maybe a leaf, but honestly, it's so bad that I'm probably going to start over. I seem like I'm okay when I talk about this stuff out loud. I'm really not. This plant is gorgeous. I've had it for over 2 years. I don't know what happened. That is my bad, but I think I got lazy and I watered it and I didn't let this drain out. I don't think this pot has a drainage hole, so I think it just sat in water and then it got burnt up top, and now it's like this. So please just take your time with your plants, be mindful. This is a super sad loss that I have here, but it is what it is, I guess. The next thing I can think of, these don't look too hot because they all need water, but underwatering. This is a serious issue again that I have, especially with my hanging plants. I don't know if I am tall enough to show you guys, but this plant is pretty much bald on the top. It's got a decent amount of growth towards the bottom, but it's bald on the top because, you guessed it, I underwatered it. So pretty much I'm kind of lazy when it comes to these because I have to get a ladder, but I need to get much better about keeping these nice and hydrated. That's what I'm trying to do with this guy. It's much more full. This is a newer plant that I just got. It's curling. You can tell I waited too long yet again to water it, so I need to take my own advice. But please kind of figure out a good mix between making sure you're not overwatering, but also the second you see things like syndapsis start to curl, you need to water. If anything, maybe catch it a little bit earlier next time. So I'm still learning myself here 3 years 3 years later. I think this is probably one of the last mistakes I have to share, and it is basically just being gentle and aware of your plants. This is a bloom, and I had a bloom on this Hoya macrophylla, and I went to water these plants. I grouped them all together, and I knocked off the bloom, and it was my first bloom I was going to have. It was devastating. So I think my tip there is just don't get in a hurry and still be very aware of your plants. Be gentle, especially with this bloom now. I mean, I carry it so, it's kind of funny, I carry it like it's a literal baby, but gotta be gentle with these guys. They can fall off so easily. Another thing with Hoyas is I do like to pretty much always let them dry out. However, when they have blooms, if they dry out too much, they can just straight up fall off. So I'm trying to keep an eye on this and letting it dry out a little bit, but making sure it's not too much so I can keep that bloom nice and healthy and hydrated. Okay guys, so I think those are the current biggest mistakes that I have to share with you. Please, again, be kind in the comments. Share anything that you have learned as a plant parent. These things happen. We need to normalize it. It is totally okay. It's also totally okay to cry about a lost leaf or a burnt monstera like this guy. It is more than understandable, especially when you've had a couple years with a plant. It is pretty devastating. So I hope this helps. I just wanted to be transparent. I think that's really important again. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.